Hello, and welcome to IntelligentPod, where curious minds come together to explore the science and art of intelligence in our everyday lives. I'm your host, Sophie Lane, and today we're diving into a topic that's been shaping human experience for thousands of years, often without us even realizing it. This episode is all about the power of narrative, how stories control our brains. Now, before you think, oh, stories? Like fairy tales and novels? Let me assure you, narrative is everywhere. It's in your morning news, your social media feeds, the pitch your coworker makes in a meeting, even the way you recall a funny moment to a friend. Stories aren't just entertainment. They're the code that programs how we think, feel, and act. So what's so special about narrative? Why do stories grip us so tightly, sometimes even changing our minds or moving us to tears? And perhaps most intriguingly, how do stories actually shape our brains? Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. That's what we'll unravel today. Let's start with a simple observation. Have you ever noticed how a dry list of facts just bounces off your brain, but a well-told story sticks with you for years? There's a reason for that, and it's not just about a good plot twist. In 2006, a Princeton neuroscientist named Uri Hassan conducted a fascinating study where he placed people in an fMRI machine and had them listen to stories. What he found was incredible. As the listener tuned in, their brain activity began to mirror that of the storyteller. It's as if our minds sync up, almost like we're living the story ourselves. This phenomenon is called neural coupling, and it's part of why stories are so powerful. Our brains literally light up in response, not just in the language centers, but in the sensory and emotional regions too. When someone describes biting into a juicy apple, your own sensory cortex might start firing. When you hear about someone running from danger, your own fight-or-flight system may quietly rev up. We're wired for story. But let's dig a little deeper, because the power of narrative isn't just biological, it's psychological and cultural too. From a psychological perspective, stories are the way we make sense of the world. Cognitive psychologists have found that we instinctively turn raw information into narrative. For example, if I told you a sequence of unrelated events, your mind would automatically search for connections, even if none exist. This is called the narrative bias, our tendency to impose story structure on the chaos of reality. One classic study by Fritz Heider and Marianne Simmel in 1944 illustrated this perfectly. They showed participants a short animation of simple geometric shapes moving around on a screen. When asked what they saw, almost everyone described the shapes as characters in a dramatic story. One triangle chasing a circle, or two shapes teaming up against another. We just can't help it. Our minds crave narrative. Culturally, stories are the glue that binds communities. Every society has its founding myths, its cautionary tales, its heroes and villains. These narratives shape our values, our sense of belonging, even our politics. Think about the stories nations tell about themselves. The land of opportunity, the great melting pot, the city on a hill. These aren't just slogans. They're narratives that influence how people see their own lives and what they believe is possible. And of course, there's the flip side. Stories can also be used to manipulate or mislead. Take propaganda, conspiracy theories, or the viral nature of misinformation online. These narratives are sticky, not because they're true, but because they're compelling. They tap into our fears, our hopes, our sense of identity. So, how do we harness the power of narrative for good? How can we become better storytellers and maybe even more discerning story consumers? Let's talk actionable advice, because that's what IntelligentPod is all about. Here are some ways you can apply the power of narrative in your own life. First, when you need to remember something important, try framing it as a story. Instead of rote memorization, build a narrative around the facts. For example, if you're learning a new concept at work, imagine yourself as the hero on a mission to solve a problem using that knowledge. You'll remember it better, I promise. Second, when communicating with others, at home, in meetings, anywhere, lean into story structure. Start with a challenge or question, build tension, and then resolve it. People are wired to pay attention to stories, not bullet points. Third, be aware of the stories you tell yourself. Psychologists call this personal narrative, the ongoing story in your head about who you are and what you're capable of. If your inner monologue is full of limiting beliefs, try rewriting the script. Instead of, I always mess up, try, I've overcome tough challenges before, and I can do it again. Your brain listens to the stories you tell. Fourth, build up your story filter. In our era of information overload, not every story you hear is true or helpful. When you encounter a compelling narrative, especially one that stirs strong emotions, pause and ask, who's telling this story and why? What facts support it? Are there other perspectives I haven't considered? This little pause can save you from falling for a viral myth or a manipulative message. And finally, if you want to connect more deeply with others, invite them to share their stories. Whether it's over dinner, in a classroom, or even in a professional setting, asking someone to tell their story can foster empathy, understanding, and trust. So, to recap, we've explored how stories aren't just entertainment. They're essential software for our brains. Narratives wire us for empathy, help us remember, shape our beliefs, and even drive our actions. But with great power comes great responsibility. The more we understand how stories work, the more we can use them to connect, to learn, and to grow, while also protecting ourselves from the stories that might lead us astray. I'll leave you with a final reflection. What's the story you're telling yourself today? Is it helping you become the person you want to be? If not, remember, you can always rewrite it. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intelligent Pod. If you enjoyed our exploration of the power of narrative, I'd love for you to leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. For show notes and more resources, visit IntelligentPod.com. And if you have thoughts, stories to share, or just want to say hello, drop me an email at sophie@IntelligentPod.com. I love hearing from listeners. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and remember, the story is yours to write. I'm Sophie Lane, and this is Intelligent Pod. Take care, everyone.